All right, John, thank you so much for coming back to the channel and welcome back to the latest edition of the live cuts. My guest sitting next to me today, you may know very well from not only on his work on the Contrarians, his collaborations with Peter Kerr on Rock Daydream Nation, but most of all on his fantastic YouTube channel, one of my favorite YouTube channels, Bicycle Legs Talks Music. We have Mr. Bicycle Legs, Daniel Bosch here. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Oh, John, it's an absolute pleasure. I've had you on my channel a few times, so it's an absolute pleasure to actually get to be on your channel for an episode. Really looking forward to this.
So am I. Absolutely. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I got other ideas I'm thinking about that we can do in the future on here as well. But before we do that, our live album that we're going to discuss today, a live album that does not get enough love or recognition, is an album that was released on December 26, 1980. This is Warren Zevon and his album Stand in the Fire. This was recorded for on the tour for the Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School album,
Yes.
and it was recorded over 5 night stints at the Roxy in Hollywood, California. This was probably released in the United States, arguably during Warren's commercial peak. From this, he was always more of a cult artist. He was a wonderful singer songwriter. It was covered by a lot of other artists, but this is probably his most successful period commercially, although he continued to release great albums right up to his passing in 2003. This album hit number 80 on the Billboard charts, the top 200 in the United States, and it hit number 94 in Australia on the Kent Music Reports. So, Daniel, when did you first get into Warren Zevon's music?
Well, I think I'd heard Werewolves of London when I was a young kid because it was like, the big hit. And it used to get played on the radio and on the TV clip shows and that sort of thing. But I really started to get into Warren Zevon in sort of the mid 80s because I was a big Jackson Browne fan.
Yes.
And obviously, Jackson Browne and Warren Zevon are pretty heavily sort of interrelated. As you know, Jackson Browne produced a couple of Warren's albums and stuff like that. He gets a shout out on this album, which we'll get to when we get to that particular song. But yeah, so it was kind of a natural progression, I suppose, from being a Jackson Browne fan into exploring Warren Zevon, and I got the Excitable Boy album probably in the mid 80s, probably around 85, 86, something like that. And it was just a case of collecting what I could find from there on because I was sort of a teenager. I didn't have a, you know, part-time job or anything like that. All I had was pocket money. So it was sort of like scrounging through the secondhand record bins and seeing what I could find. So it was just a case of what I could pick up when I could pick it up. But yeah, so that's kind of where I've been with Warren, and I've been following his career ever since, obviously. And we sadly lost him, 22 years ago now.
Crazy, isn't it?
And as you say, he was putting out great albums all the way up to the very, very end.
Absolutely. And the thing with me with Warren Zevon is I'm more of a casual fan. When I was growing up, and to this day, the songs you heard by Warren Zevon 90% of the time, and I might be downplaying it a little bit, were from Excitable Boy. On our classic rock stations, Rock 107, WEZX FM out of Scranton, Pennsylvania, which I always like to promote, they would only play Werewolves of London, Lawyers, Guns, and Money, Excitable Boy. We didn't even hear Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner much. There may have been a few others here and there when they first came out, but then you'd never hear them again. But in the days when AOR, album oriented rock, had these long playlists, you'd hear like 20 songs by Rush or 20 songs by the Eagles or Fleetwood Mac, for example. You don't hear those three by Warren Zevon. So I didn't know much about Warren Zevon other than what I heard from Excitable Boy. I never saw him live. He played near my home about 30 years ago, and I didn't go, and I'm kicking myself because not only did I not see Warren Zevon, his opening act was Chris Whitley, who is one of my favorite singer-songwriters, and
Oh, wow.
he passed away in 2005. So I'm relatively green on Warren's catalog. This copy of Stand in the Fire is part of the original album classic series, which has albums 2 through 6, the self-titled second album, right through the Envoy from 1982. So I'm kind of getting my feet wet with Warren Zevon. But I knew that you were a big fan. So I was like, I never hear this talked about. So I was like, so I proposed, let's talk about Stand in the Fire, and you were very willing to do that. So
Yeah.
before we go on, you were showing me something before we went on the air today. This album was released as a 1 record set,
Yeah.
and then it came out as a 2 record set with additional
Yeah.
tracks.
This one here was released in 2021 on an imprint called Run Out Groove, which is owned by Warner's. And yeah, it's limited edition, numbered, and yeah, it's got a whole second disc of 10 extra tracks, all from the Roxy shows as well. So um, well worth picking up if you can find it. But if you look on Discogs, you're going to find that it comes at a fairly hefty price these days because it is limited edition. So
Right. That's something I'll keep in mind if I see it on Discogs. Did it only come out on vinyl or did they release it as a 2 CD set?
yeah, no, this full 20 song set is only available on vinyl, as far as
Okay.
I'm aware.
Okay, that's good to know. So, with this album, we have selections from the self-titled Warren Zevon album, Excitable Boy, Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School, and we have 1 cover song and 2 new songs. And the first of those, oh, actually, before we go into the track listing, let's talk about who played on the album. And the band here is Warren Zevon on bass guitar, piano, keyboards, and 12-string guitar, of course, on lead vocals. David Landau on lead guitar, Zeke Zerngiebel on a variety of guitars because they listed a whole bunch of guitars and they just wrote a variety of guitars down. Bob Harris on synthesizer and piano, Roberto Pignon on bass and backing vocals, Marty Stinger on drums. The first track is a new song at the time of the album release, and it's the title track. What do you think of this track, Daniel?
Yeah, funnily enough, this is one of 2 new songs on this album, as you mentioned. And of the 2 of them, I think one's really good and one is kind of so-so. And
Okay.
unfortunately, I think the one that starts the album off, Stand in the Fire, not the best song Warren ever wrote. I mean, I think it's kind of designed to be a concert opener. It's,
Okay.
the lyric isn't particularly profound, which You know, I like Warren's lyrics when they're a little more deep and meaningful and that sort of thing. But I mean, this is basically a rave up song to start a show. And as such, it works fine, but it's not my favorite song. It's probably my least favorite song on the album, to be honest. Um, but you talked about the band. I think that's really interesting too. When Warren recorded his studio albums, he worked with a plethora of, big names in the LA scene. Um, the sort of people that our friend Martin Popoff would describe as the avocado mafia.
Yes.
And, you know, and this band doesn't have any of those players in it. It's a real band of no names. You know, I'd never heard of any of these guys. You look up this album on Wikipedia, and you get the listing of the band members. Not a single one of them has their own Wikipedia entry. So,
Okay. Hmm.
you know, so that's interesting. That they're obviously not that well known, these players. So, but I think they played with real fire, as we'll get into some of the other tracks. But yeah, Stand in the Fire is it's not my favorite Warren Zevon track, but I think it serves its purpose as a concert opener reasonably well. But I think there's a lot of better stuff on this album.
I agree with you on the lyrical part of this, and I agree with you about how it's a rave up to start the album because you always want you start out a live show on a high note, get the band in. You're not going to start with a slow ballad, for example. What I
Hmm.
do respect about this song, though, is after the guitar solo, musically it gets more somber in its execution. They're not playing it at that same pace. They're switching up the tempo, and it becomes really moody at the end where it starts where which would I guess would be kind of like in line with a Warren show because he's taking you through these different moods in these songs because I think musically the songs that he writes fit the words that he's writing. If he's talking about something more serious, he's going to slow it down and maybe be more organic in the way they present it, like a piano, for example, so you could focus more on the lyrics. I notice this on this song that it starts out like a rave up, but then it gets really cerebral, and then it shows you where it's going to take you as the show keeps going on. So I like it, but I know what you mean. It's not one of his strongest songs, surely.
Yeah.
And next we go into Jeannie Needs a Shooter. This is a song that Warren co-wrote with Bruce Springsteen, and this is on Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School.
Yeah, and it's a great, great song. And the one thing that kind of puzzled me a little bit, and I suppose it's because it is only a single album, there's only 10 songs. Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School was his most recent album at the time this came out. It came out earlier in 1980. And this is the only song from it on the
Yes.
record. So that's a bit of a head scratcher, as our friend Peter Kerr would say.
Yes.
Um, but on the extended version that I've got here with the extra disc, he does play a few other songs from Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School. And but it's one of the best songs off that album, Genie Needs a Shooter. It's one of those deep character studies that,
Yes.
Warren is so well known for. And I'm sure Bruce had a big hand in that as well, because, Bruce Springsteen's written his fair share of sort of deep character studies as well.
No question.
It's something that the two of them had in common as far as, their lyrics are concerned. I've always loved Genie Needs a Shooter. And the thing about the live performance of it though is that Warren gets a little shouty with his vocal, compared with what he's like on the record on the studio version. And again, it's that energy that he's giving out in the live performance. You look at that picture of him on that front cover. you can tell this is a guy who used to give 110% in concert, you
Yes.
know. Um, and you can hear that in this version of this song. So, I mean, it's a great version. But yeah, it's just strange that, for his most recent record, he only puts the one song on the live album. But I suppose he had a lot of things to cover, and there were certain songs that he just absolutely had to play, and we get those coming up in the next few songs.
Right. And yeah, and I would think that too. And it was another thing I noticed when I first listened to this album and I looked into it and saw there was only one track from his latest album. It's a little more grittier. I think the synth is a little bit higher in the mix. It's a very strong track, very strong lyrically as well. Like you said, it's a character study, and he did this so well. Definitely, it definitely has to be on this album. It's one of the stronger tracks on Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School, in my opinion. So next, we're going to go into one of the more famous songs by Warren, certainly here in the United States, and that would be "Excitable Boy."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, title track of his most successful album. So, and it's a kind of a character study, but this one's a much more light-hearted one. Although it gets very dark in the last couple of verses, it's still, even when it gets dark, it's black humor, you
Right.
know. And and it just I love the fact that, you've got this musically, it's so bouncy and upbeat. And then the lyrics, the first couple of verses, it just sounds like this guy's a bit of a strange person, a bit of a wacko. But then in the next couple of verses, it gets really dark, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's still kind of played for black humor, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and and again, Warren gives us such a great vocal delivery on this song. Um, and it's interesting to hear the all male band doing the backup vocals because on the record, it's female backing vocals
Right.
on that song. I think it might even be Linda Ronstadt and one or two of the others from that sort of LA scene. And to hear the all male backing band doing the ooh wah ooh, you know, um, just gives it a slightly different slant, and I like that about it. Um, it's an energetic version. I'll point this out with a couple of the other songs that we're going to be talking about too, is funnily enough, even though these are really energetic versions of these songs, I noticed they tend to be ever so slightly slower than the versions on the studio albums.
I was thinking that, but I didn't write it down because I was wondering if that was just me.
No, no, they're definitely just not a lot, but just a little bit slower than the versions. And one of the other things I love about this record, generally speaking, not just on this song, but generally speaking, is you really feel the energy of the audience, which you don't always feel on live albums. And I think that's at least in part because they recorded it at the Roxy Theatre in Hollywood, which is actually a very small club. I looked it up. It only holds about 500 people.
That's right.
So, he's not playing in an arena or a stadium or anything like this. He's playing in this very intimate little club. And yeah, and the way it's been recorded, it was, Greg Ladani and Warren Zevon were the producers, and Greg Ladani was the guy who recorded the concert. And again, he's worked with a whole bunch of LA artists, including Jackson Brown, and he worked with the Church later on,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and artists like that. I think he's really done well recording, getting the balance between the band and the audience on this record. And I think that's not something that's always well done on live albums, but it is really, really well done on this one.
I agree with that completely. And as someone who's gone to a lot of shows in a lot of smaller venues. They just tend to be more energetic because I think true artists prefer to play to smaller audiences because those smaller audiences are going to be more, they're going to be deeper into that band or artist music. And I think that brings something out of the band and the artist. I noticed that excitement throughout this album. You can really hear the crowd getting into it, and it's recorded very well. It's you know it's a live show, but at the same time, the way it's mixed, it's perfect mix because you hear them both very well. It doesn't take. It's not the crowd is not too loud, is what I'm saying. When I listen to Excitable Boy, yeah, it's a grittier version. We don't have the sax. We don't have the female backing vocals, but as you mentioned, their backing vocals, it's almost as like the studio. It's an all male band, but they are replicating those backing vocals just like they did on the record. Excellent version, very rousing. And then we get into a track from the self-titled second album, Muhammad's Radio.
Yeah, this is such a beautiful song. Um, Both Warren's version and Linda Ronstadt did a lovely version of it a couple of years after Warren's
Yes.
version. But this is where you get to hear the depth of Warren's voice because, on the first couple of tracks, he's kind of in shouty mode, as it were, because again, the energy of the live crowd and the audience and the just the energy of the band as well. But here he takes it back, Muhammad's Radio is a ballad. It's a quieter song, and he gets to sing that in that deep, beautiful baritone of his. And it's one of his great tracks, I think. And the version that they do here is absolutely beautiful. One thing I will say, if you want to see a different live version of this song, there is one on YouTube of him performing it with Jackson Brown from about 1976 or 1977, something like that. I think they were touring together, and they do a version together, and that's really, really good too. But yeah, I've always loved Muhammad's Radio. I think it's one of the standout songs on the self-titled album, and they do a fabulous version of it, And it's great to see another side of this band as well, not just of Warren, but of the whole band. They dial it back and get into the mood of the song. It's kind of like what you were saying about the first song, Stand in the Fire, how it's kind of a preview of what the whole concert would be like. Well, this is the part where they do take it back and they get into, sort of mood music. And it's always been one of my favorite Warren Zevon songs, and this is a fabulous, fabulous version of it.
Absolutely. I think it's more grandiose in its presentation here. It's,
Mm.
well, you were mentioning they were playing just a little bit slower. This is the song I was thinking about. The original, you have Bobby Keys on here playing sax, and you had, I think we had Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks doing the backing vocals, I believe. On
Yes, I think so.
Yes, here it's more. It feels more grandiose, as I mentioned. They reference some topical things here in the lyrics. He's ad-libbing the lyrics here because this was released during the Carter administration here in the United States. And at that time, one of the issues here with that during that time when he was our president was the high price of gasoline. And
Mm.
being someone who was young at that time and riding around my father, I remember those gas lines being at the fuel pumps here in the United States. And my father saying to me, when you're old enough to drive, gas is going to be $6 a gallon. Fortunately, that has yet to happen as I
Mm.
say this at age 54. But he was talking about Jimmy Carter still has the highway blues here, talking about referencing what was going on during that time, but he's only going into that part of what was going on during the Carter years. But I think this is one of the standout tracks on here, and the band, as you said, not the the studio musicians who got a lot of work during that time that played on his albums. We got a whole different band here, but their take on it is very, very strong. And I love Warren's vocal line. It's very passionate. Very good.
Absolutely. And the thing about Warren ad-libbing lyrics, um, we're going to see that a lot in the next song, aren't we? You know, he does quite a bit of it in a much more playful manner.
Yes, no doubt about that. As we go into what is his biggest single here in the United States, Werewolves of London from Excitable Boy. What are your thoughts on the live version of this track?
Well, again, go and listen to this and then listen to the studio version, and you will find it is a little bit slower than the
Mm-hmm.
studio version. Um, but they're obviously having a lot of fun with this one. You know, Warren is ad-libbing lyrics. He's throwing out name calls to Jackson Brown and James Taylor and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, and having a lot of fun with it. And, again, we're getting shouty Warren again, which is, great because this is the song that everybody's, been there to hear. It was his big hit single and all that sort of thing. And the thing I like about this too is he's obviously enjoying playing this song, even though, a lot of people who get classified as one hit wonders, and unfortunately Warren gets kind of put into that category. They get quite a lot of people who get sort of put in that one hit wonder category get resentful of that one hit, and they don't want to play it or, and that sort of thing. I don't get that with Warren on this, certainly not on this version of this song. He sounds like he's having a lot of fun playing this song and knowing that the crowd are going to go nuts for it. And you hear them right at the beginning. As soon as he starts playing that piano riff, the crowd just, ah, and he's having a lot of fun. Yeah, ad-libbing extra verses, like not just the odd uh, shout out and that sort of thing. He's ad-libbing whole extra verses to this
Mm-hmm.
song, about going and buying a car and all this sort of thing. And yeah, it's a rollicking version, even though it is a little slowed down. It's the band get into a groove, which I don't think the studio version really has a groove. It's much more straight, four to the floor kind of
Yes.
thing. Whereas this, it feels like it's got a bit of feel and a bit of groove to it, and I rather like that about this version as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely stretching this out, a lot more loose. We got longer guitar solo on here. It seems like there's more call and response on here between Warren and David's guitar in the verses. I noticed I really picked up on that. So yeah, this I agree with everything that you said. I mean, there is a groove to it. It's much more loose. Wonderful version. And like you said, he doesn't sound resentful of playing his hit. He's just like, okay, I wrote this. I'm proud of this. And they're doing a heck of a job with it. And speaking of popular songs from Excitable Boy, we go into the next track, which is Lawyers, Guns, and Money.
And again, this is a bit like Werewolves of London. It's a little bit slower. It's a little more sort of loose, as you say,
Mhm.
but it's got a bit of groove to it. Um, there's a lot of bottom end on this whole album, which I don't think there's as much of on his studio albums. And the drums and the bass, you get a lot of the drums and the bass in this whole record. And I think this is a good example of it, this particular song. I've always loved this song because, again, it's that kind of dark humor from Warren in the lyric. And, you know, this kind of, I always get the idea that the protagonist of this song is kind of this kind of spoiled rich kid who's getting himself into trouble and that sort of
Right.
thing. And and I like that about it because I mean that's not who Warren was. He was never a spoiled rich kid. But yeah, it's always been one of my favorite songs off Excitable Boy. It's one of his best known songs for a reason because it's a great song, and it's a really good version, as I say here. Um, gritty, gritty version.
Yes. I I couldn't add anything else to what you said here. It's just looser, grittier version. We're staying true to the original, but it's just, it just has more fire to it. The next track is would be a new song at this point, and I'm really looking forward to what you think of the song "The Sin."
Well, kind of alluded at the beginning of this that there were two new songs. One I liked, one I wasn't so keen on. I wasn't so keen on Stand in the Fire. I think The Sin is a great song.
Me too.
Um, and it's a little bit of a pity he never did a studio version of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good song. The lyric, again, it's one of those heartfelt lyrics of his. It's like you're talking about, can have you done something that's unforgivable, sort of thing. And yeah, it's a really great musically. This song is really great too because it's again, I think it suits this version and this band really well because they get gritty with it, and it's got that bottom end again. And Warren sings the hell out of this song, which I think is really cool. But yeah, go and read the lyrics to this song if you've never sort of sat down and read them because they're really good. And just the idea of, the things that we do that we feel are sinful or whatever. And, it's like, are people going to forgive us? Are we going to forgive ourselves, sort of thing? So, yeah, it's a really good song.
When I read the lyrics to the song, I was like, this is a song that stands up today because it has a universal feel. Because no matter what's going on in the world, we're always going to have bullies. We're always going to have liars. We're always going to have thieves. And there are a lot of people who are have very strong opinions against that kind of behavior. And that's what I hear from Warren when he is singing these lyrics. And the delivery from the band is so hard hitting, it works perfectly with the lyrics in the song. I think the song kicks. Very simple chorus. How are you gonna pay for your sin? Yeah, that's as nearly as hard hitting and as poignant as it gets because you're being accusatory to someone who has done something wrong. And that will always be out there, unfortunately. But he wrote this song in 1980. It is universal and it works in 2025 the way it would in 1980.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next song is Poor Pitiful Me. This was covered by Linda Ronstadt. She covered several of Warren Zevon's songs. This one would become a pretty big hit for her in the United States. What do you think of this version?
Yeah. Again, it's a really good version. It's a little slowed down. It's a little grittier than the version on his self-titled second album. A lot of people kind of poo-poo the fact that Linda Ronstadt covered Warren Zevon's songs and say, they're no good and rah rah rah. Firstly, I quite like her versions of Warren's songs. Secondly, I'm always appreciative of the fact that she covered Warren's songs because it gave him some notoriety that he wouldn't have had otherwise.
I agree.
And it gave him some income that he wouldn't have had otherwise, royalties from
Absolutely.
because those Linda Ronstadt albums that these songs were on were huge sellers.
Mhm.
So they sold a lot more records than Warren's records did, you know. So I'm always appreciative to Linda Ronstadt that she covered his songs because it put him out there and it gave him a steady income as well so that he could keep doing what he was doing. But again, the band on this version of this song get down and dirty. Um, and I love that about it. Again, this is one of those rave up songs, isn't it? It's one of
Yes,
those more light-hearted songs where he's, sort of taking the piss out of himself in a lot of ways in the lyric. And, oh, poor, poor, pitiful me, look at all these things that I've done. Um, Warren was never afraid of looking at the dark side of himself or the less than wholesome parts of himself and putting those in his songs and kind of poking fun at them. And he does that with this song. So yeah, it's a really good version. You know, listening to the band on this whole album, I would have been fascinated to see what would have come out of him taking that band into the studio and doing an album with them, like a studio album with them, rather than using
absolutely.
all the big Hollywood hot shots that he used on most of his albums. I think it would have given one or two of those records a different feel, and I just would have been interested to see what would have come of that.
Yeah, we agree with you on that. I mean, because those studio albums, you know, perhaps someone could say maybe they sounded too perfect, you know, maybe not you or I, but maybe someone else could. Yeah, it would be interesting because they're giving these songs a different feel more often than not. I mean, they're still true to their foundation, but they're played a little slower, they're played a little grittier. Warren is ad-libbing or doing more with the vocal. He's shouting certain vocals at times. So I agree with that. Yeah, it would be an interesting for him to have this band come in and do Sentimental Hygiene, for example, or Mr. Bad Example, or one of those albums. Your thoughts on Linda covering Warren are similar to how I feel about artists covering John Hyatt, because John Hyatt is one of my favorite singer songwriters. And Bonnie Raitt made his song Thing Called Love a big hit. And when he does that song live, he'll say, because of that version, it's put my kids through school. It's put
Mm.
tires on our cars all these years. He's still getting those residuals from that song. I think about the folk singer Tom Rush. What a lot of people wouldn't know is that he was covering James Taylor and Joni Mitchell songs when people didn't really know who they were yet. And then they became huge stars. And Tom Rush kind of just stayed in that folk lane. But he gave them their first notoriety, I should say. He interpreted their songs. And then more people wanted to hear Joni and wanted to hear James. And then with Bonnie doing that for John Hyatt. So I've always appreciated what Linda has done for Warren in that aspect. And I've heard enough of her versions to know that. And I love Little Feat. She's covered Little Feat songs when Little Feat they were more of a cult act here in the United States. They weren't getting on the charts. People knew them, but Linda Ronstadt was giving Lowell George more notoriety. This rocks really hard. Warren's all into it. I think he's asking the crowd to come out and start dancing at one point. He's really, really feeling it. Very spirited. And they stretch it out again. Yeah, this is a very strong version. It's definitely more riveting, more of a party feel than you have on the version that was on the self-titled second album. And now we go into we're going into more of a rave up feel with I'll Sleep When I'm Dead.
Oh yeah, I mean this song just stomps, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's got this boom,
Mhm.
You know, you can almost hear the crowd stamping their feet to it,
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I mean it's a rave up. It's, you know, just such a great Warren Zevon sentiment too. The whole idea I'll sleep when I'm dead. Um, yeah, I mean, and this band is perfect for this song because they just absolutely stomp it into the ground. And yeah, I don't know that there's a lot more I can say about this because it's just the energy of this song is just perfect. Just that one, two, one,
Yes.
two, one, two, and you can tell they're getting towards the end of the show because they're really building up to a climax here. And yeah, it's an absolutely stomping track to be the sort of second last track on the album.
And it does, that rhythm seems to hit harder here than it does on the original, certainly. Yeah, again, we got another hard hitting rain rave up. I wrote down here, it feels like we're almost at the end of the show. And the crowd is really getting into it. The band is really feeling it. Got some nice piano rolls on here. It's like we're getting the band's getting a little chance to shine on here. Very, very strong. But again, like we said, it feels like the end of something. Like we had all these different moods that we're going through, and now it's like, okay, we're at the end. We're gonna end it on a high note. And we end it on the medley. Bo Diddley's the gunslinger slash Bo Diddley.
Yeah. I mean, I always loved the fact that Bo Diddley wrote songs about himself,
Yeah.
and put his own name in the title and that sort of thing. He obviously didn't have any self-esteem issues, old Bo Diddley.
No, he did
But
not.
it was often you look at a lot of these live albums from the 70s, and I mean this is from 1980, so we're just starting to get into the 80s as well. A lot of bands would do these rock and roll medleys and that
Yes.
sort of thing. And on a lot of those records, I always found those a bit of a low light. Like I've got that Uriah Heep live album,
Okay.
and they do this rock and roll medley at the end of it, and I'm like, why are you doing that? I don't get that feel at all with this Bo Diddley medley from Warren. I think it absolutely suits the mood of the record perfectly. It's a great way to go out. And you know, I almost feel like Warren is channeling Bo Diddley in his vocal on these songs, because he feels like he's living those lyrics. And I love that about it. And the band are just absolutely raving it up. It's just, yeah, it's a great way to end a great live album.
I agree. Like a part of me would would have liked him to end it with one of his own, but at the same
Mm,
time, I do like the feel here because we're going in even more of a rave up feel than we did in I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, where we have that guitar line and that rhythm that is everyone knows it because he wrote who I believe he wrote the original Who Do You Love? I'm not actually he didn't write it, but
mm,
Who Do You Love of is the same feel. Josephine has that same feel, that same rhythm that is universal, which is something that a lot of people know, and it ends it very, very strong. It, it's a great concert closer, even though I would have liked original, but I still think it out ends this album very, very well. This was the Dog Ate the Part We Didn't Like tour. That's an interesting way to call your
yeah,
tour. We got a small, enthusiastic crowd on here. The crowd is playing off the energy. The band is top notch on here, adding a slightly different perspective to these tracks, but still keeping the foundation. This is
yeah.
Warren Zevon's Stand in the Fire. And as Daniel mentioned, if you can get your hands on that 2 LP edition that came out in limited supply in 2021,
Yeah,
shot.
absolutely do. I'll just quickly give your viewers a bit of a rundown on what the tracks are on disc two,
Surely.
because you get Johnny Strikes Up the Band, you get Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner, you get Play It All Night Long from Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School, Nighttime in the Switching Yard, which is a bit of a deep cut off Excitable Boy. You get Gorilla You're a Desperado, which is off Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School and was also a single. You get the title track of Bad Luck Streak. You get a slightly different version of The Sin, probably from a different night, because they did record 5 nights. Um, you get Frank and Jesse James and Hasten Down the Wind, both from the self titled album. And then you get A Certain Girl, which was a cover version that he did on Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School. So yeah, it's a great second disc. Um, you know, which songs would you have included? I don't know, but as you said, it would have been great to see this as a two-disc set in the first place. It's one of those, you know, I think people have done shows about single live albums that should have been doubles and that sort of thing. This is definitely a candidate for that, without a doubt.
Excellent. What do you think of how would you compare the version of The Sin on the 2 LP version to the single, the alternate
Not
version?
hugely they're not
Okay.
hugely different. It's described on the disc two as the alternate slightly longer version.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the big difference, is that it is a little longer. But version wise, there's not a lot of difference between the two of them, other than the fact that, one's slightly longer than the other.
Okay. Very good. This is Warren Zevon. Stand in the Fire. So, have you heard this album? And if you've heard this album, what do you think of it? Are you a Warren Zevon fan? What are your favorite albums? What are your favorite songs by Warren Zevon? Have you seen Warren Zevon play live? Please let us know in the comments. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on my show today and talk about this fantastic album.
Oh, absolute pleasure, John. Thanks for having me, and
Welcome.
thanks for picking this album, because I did a show earlier this year with Martin Popov where we talked about Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School, and we talked briefly about this album as one of the things that came out after Bad Luck Streak. And Martin was a little dismissive of it. And I thought that was a bit of a shame, because I really, really like this album, obviously. And so it was just a great opportunity to talk about this album. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome and thank you. What do you have coming up on Bicycle Legs Talks Music?
Well, as we're recording this, so it'll probably already be out by the time this show is out. Um, this weekend, I have a show coming out with our mutual friend Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation. We are doing a rather controversial one, I think. We are doing an in defense of the album Yoko Ono Plastic Ono Band,
Whoa.
which is an album that both of us really, really like. So that should be an interesting one. Obviously, too, as I mentioned to you, John, before we started recording, I will in early September be having my anniversary album show, which I have at the beginning of every month. And it's a bit of a banner episode because it will be the 50th episode of anniversary albums. So do check that out.
Congratulations on that 50th episode of that series, which I have said many times is my favorite monthly series to watch on YouTube. I love that. I love what you do with that show. And it's something that I
Oh, thank you.
purposely get up early on Saturday morning here on the East Coast in the United States to check out so I can put my comment in right after. Anybody who watches the show, you probably see my comments on there. You probably see me on the chat too. That is Well, that was a fantastic concept that you came up with. That's you put a patent on that. That's I love that show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Do what you love, and we'll talk to you soon.